Regular meeting of the City Planning and Zoning Board will come to order. Tim, we'll start off with the preliminary matters, agenda additions and deletions. Do you have any?
The staff has none, sir.
And does the board have any?
No.
Not me.
Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of last meeting minutes from December 18th.
So moved.
We have a motion for acceptance of the minutes. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Susan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now we'll open the meeting up to public comment, and because I see nobody in the audience right now, I will immediately close public comment, and we'll go into the planning department matters. And Tim, I think you're going to lead us on this.
Yes, I'll work you through, and I know we don't have any development approval today or any other or legislative action, but I thought since we hadn't had a meeting, I think we canceled one. These are good meetings that we can work on things that would be at a tail end of another meeting, and by then sometimes you're tired if we have a long hearing. So I hope you don't mind. Nobody was complaining that we're having the meeting today. But
we wanted to complain, but we didn't.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad you're being honest with me. The first item I'd like to discuss had to do with the off-street parking regulations. If you recall the Mulligan's situation we went through, you all, except one, all recommended to move forward on that, and had to do with the outdoor parking for outdoor dining and everything. We had an appeal on that, and the appeal itself, it was a 2-2 vote. We didn't have a full council. What bothered me after looking at it, there was an issue that wasn't brought up at that meeting that could clarify the code, but at least two of the council members, or one of their council members, they were, let's put it this way, they didn't see the way we interpreted code, even though it had been adopted that way, and I believe it was clear. So I think, in all fairness to the policy, that we needed to clean it up so we don't get into that. I think, if we're going to make a decision that we want to put some limitations on outdoor dining, do it. But you were in a position that was the interpretation, which I think is still that was correct at the time. But the ordinance itself, I took a look at it, and I thought we'd clean it up so we can go back. And if the council or you want to suggest further changes, we certainly can do it. So that's why I have it on. So unless you have some questions, I'm going to just briefly go through with what we did. And I made it. I also included the 63.04, which is the parking ratio, so you could, if you needed, to look back in there. The first thing is that I identified is, and it didn't come up in the hearing, but floor area is not the only criteria that's used in parking. And it could be, if you read literally this thing, you wouldn't and that, well, I shouldn't say it wasn't brought up. It was brought up by the appellate's attorney on that thing. So we clarify it by stating that the parking ratios are in 63.04 and that floor area as defined. So we keep that in there. It's still in, and that takes care of that problem we had. So you can look back in there, and I think that cleans it up. We also cleaned up about the covered area, and it's subject to park requirements the same as if you're under. So that cleaned that up, I believe. And then the other one, we put in a specific exemption, and that was the thing they brought up. Well, if the council wanted to do this, they should have specifically stated rather than indirectly by trying to interpret the code. And that's a valid. It's a valid thing to be more transparent to the public. So we've written the language now that outdoor dining and retail sales and services not under cover as described in that paragraph 2 above shall be exempt from park requirements to this title. So the city attorney and I feel that this takes care of some of those problems that we had in the code. Now, the one thing I didn't, and I address at the very end of mine because I like to have for input, we still don't have a limitation on what's exempt on the outdoor dining. And I didn't get into it. To be honest with you, I was in a hurry doing this, and I didn't. I would have to write it. I thought it'd be easier to just talk about it to you all. Right now, if somebody comes in, they are exempt from the outdoor dining. Let's say the Mulligan situation where you came in with so many thousand feet. Well, at that hearing, they really could not say no to it unless there was some competent, substantial evidence that outdoor dining would create some off-site problems. And really, there wasn't any. There was a lot of anecdotal stuff, but that's a bad position to put in. If you want to have some limitations on it, you would say 1,000 square feet or something like that. It's not been an issue in the past, and I don't think. The thing you have to understand, most outdoor dining areas, one, is obviously weather dependent. So you're not going to get the same as enclosed. Two, a lot of times especially in our climate, and that came out at the hearing, with good weather, a lot of people are not going to sit inside. They're going to be outside. So it doesn't necessarily add, the amount of extra space doesn't necessarily mean that the restaurant's going to be full and they're going to add all this additional space. So that's a consideration.
It accommodates the clientele.
Yes. So sometimes some ordinances, and I'll be honest with you, count it as half. They just make a determination on that. I'm not saying that we should change it all, but if you would like us to consider putting a limitation on it, it has worked real well. We've done it in 10 or 12 dining established throughout the city, but most of them have been very small. Okay, if they'd been large, you would have seen them because they would have to come before you. But they admit that they were under the threshold, so they were just minor things that aren't worthy of having to go through a hearing process. I mean, that's part of what we're trying to do. But if you feel that something larger than that has some more, say, consideration other than just meeting the requirements of law, which is that competent substantial evidence, then that I've opened that up to receive input if you would like to discuss that, or if you just want to go with what we have and the changes we're proposing.
I have one question for you, and it's
Yes.
about take the Bonefish Grill, for example, which is a fine restaurant down at the point down there. They have a lot of outdoor dining. Tell me how would it impacted them?
Well, yeah, if we had the thing in, they would get 200 square feet exempt of that undercover. It's undercover is a different. When we say outdoor dining, because they have a canopy. Yes, that makes a difference because what happens?
What about forgive me, Tim. What about an umbrella though? That's movable. You put it in when the sun's up. You put it down. Is that
umbrellas? We don't consider that.
So that's a difference.
That's a different thing. And why we do that is because they can. If you notice, most places in Florida come down with plastic or poly sheets, and it's just like enclosing it. Okay. So you take care of some of the inclement, the wind, the rain coming in. So we only consider outdoor dining per se if it's truly that'd be exempt. If you have an umbrella or something, you're out in the elements still.
Okay.
So
if the water penetrates the roof through the material or whatever it's up there, is that an umbrella then?
We haven't had that. Most people put a covering on there that would be. It's not something you remove. For instance, the Bonefish Grill is out there fairly permanently, unless I don't know if they have.
Yes, it is.
They would take it down if a storm came.
Rains,
doesn't look like they could. But
when it rains, you don't get wet. Now, a storm, they could untie it if they wanted to.
Right, but that's more of a that kind of thing. So that's how we look at it. And as I said, most of them, you'll see the little outdoor. The dining, go over Osceola Bistro, you'll see you have a little seating out there and all that. And any of that outside from under cover like that, we consider outdoor dining as long as it doesn't have that kind of covering that you could enclose it even temporarily. I mean, that's the rule of thumb we used, and it's been fairly easy to implement from that standpoint.
In our parks, we're using these 3 triangle type things that are they permanent? Yeah. Pardon me?
You mean the shade
sails? Shade sails?
Right, for the children's playground. Is
that an umbrella or is that permanent? Which would you call that?
Well, no, that's temporary, but it's for the. I haven't had anybody come in to do dining that way, so I don't think we're going to either. So I mean, yes.
Okay.
My question has to do with the subject of retail display versus sales versus service. I don't understand. Are we asking for? Do we need to clarify what a display, what a service, what a sale
no, the service
about?
is all on our general retail, so it's basically...
But this is outdoor.
Yes, this is outdoor. So this is where you have like art, other types of things that you'll see in the... like you go down to... you see more of that down in the beach side where you'll see art out there, and that's okayed under that. Okay, it's not intended for automobiles and all that. That's why we got in that discussion. Any of those motor vehicles or all kind of displays you have for vehicles or vessels and trailers and stuff. That's all separate under a different classification, and that has other landscaping and other kind of requirements. But that's okay.
But if they're conducting sales outside,
it's fine to do that.
Same.
You
Okay.
generally, but to do that, you may be exempt, but you still need approval, planning department, or your approval, depending on the stuff, to have that.
So we don't need
just
to
because you're
qualify
exempt
any
from
of those.
yes, just because you're exempt from the parking does not mean that you don't go through development approval. And I'll tell you, because some of these outdoor dining areas could be very close to a residential neighborhood, and we've got to be very careful
That's true.
about those kind of impacts on them. And that's
But if a retail establishment puts artwork outside and sells it, is it the cash register that says that they're, or if they take the purchase inside, it's just displaying it outside?
No, just to display if it's for sale. And usually we allow a certain amount that they can be, like on retail, you can have it under the awnings, which is so minor we don't really get into
Right.
that. It's when they get, we don't have many of this. It's really the outdoor dining. It's what's been it. But, we get to the more these successful pedestrian areas, you may get more of outdoor where you have artwork and stuff. I mean, and we
Backs of
encourage that.
clothing.
That was the whole thing.
Isn't that what makes us kind of unique and special, though? In some boutique areas, they have that. That's very
Exactly.
predominant. And if you
Yes.
take it away, then you become
And-
Old Main Street, which is
and this is
dry and
really
boring.
this is really an incentive for these people to do it. I mean, the thing is the balancing act that we're not creating enough impacts to other properties.
Great.
And
It is a balancing act.
And so that's where we go through this thing. So it's kind of finding that, and that's why I brought this up about do you want to limit this? I at this point,
Yeah,
I think
I don't want
Mulligan's.
people
I think
arguing.
Mulligan's is is kind of atypical of what we'll see. We've never really had that, and it's there aren't a lot of oceanfront. Those kind of properties that would do that. I mean, you're all aware of most of the hotels have these outdoor areas. Yeah.
Question I have, Tim.
Yes, ma'am.
Right now, if just say Mulligan's, you're saying it's 1,000 square feet outside dining. So if
No,
someone,
it's like 3,000. I think that's what.
that was going to be my question.
Yes.
If someone had 2,000 or 3,000 square feet of outside dining, 4,000 square feet, that does not mean that they have to have additional parking at this time?
No, the way the ordinance reads now, they wouldn't. They still have to get approval. So if it's that kind of site, like Mulligan's had to come before you all. I
Correct.
think if they were under 1,000, I could approve them. I mean, the staff could. Okay, so we created a threshold there, and that's why they came through the public hearing because of how big the area was, or much area covered.
Yeah, Tim, one of the issues with this is that in strip malls, when they do this, and even on 14th Avenue when they do this, you have a sidewalk which is fairly narrow, and they go out into the sidewalk and they start restricting pedestrian traffic, and they move the pedestrians out into the parking area or into the street. Is there any way we
have regulations that deal with that. Okay, basically, to get approval from us, you have to have at least a strip that's big, an ADA strip, and all that. We get into that.
Okay,
that's automatically as part of any approval. And you haven't seen one of those, but when we deal with the downtown and people on 14th, we get into that.
And then it becomes a matter of code enforcement.
Yes. Well, hope they won't get approval. If they do it, yes, and we'll send code enforcement, and they'll have somebody will visit them to explain the problem.
Question, Tim.
Yes, sir.
A question was raised about Mulligan's, whether it was 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. Over 1,000 square feet would
be
have
under
to come
your
before us.
right.
But what gives us the right to deny that approval?
Okay, as I was pointing out to you, such as in the Mulligan's case, you'd had to have, because the way the ordinance read, that it was exempt, so parking wasn't an issue unless there was substantial competent evidence that said that parking caused an off-site problem of some sort. That was and see, you have to have that evidence really to meet the requirements of law.
Correct, because you made a statement, impact to other properties.
Yes.
So I'm thinking about cravings, for example.
Right.
Years ago, when it was just the ice cream sandwich shop, and all of a sudden there was development, which over the course of a couple, 3 years turned into a covered outside dining area. Now, the arguments back then, I forget how long ago this was, 10, 15 years ago, was the impact that it might have on neighboring properties. and there was a big fight over that. Mm-hmm.
Well, we still get into that. I mean, when you say impacted neighborhood properties, as I pointed out, one was a noise impact. Obviously, in the Mulligans, there was people believed it impacted the parking, and conceivably, it probably wouldn't affect the traffic and all that. But there could be those impacts, or there could be solid waste and other kinds of things that would be created by these people outdoors throwing bottles over the thing. Those are off-site impacts. And you take that into consideration. It depends on what the land uses are next to it. It's in the middle of a commercial district. You're more limited in what kind of, you can expect you're going to have this kind of development in a commercial district.
Well,
it's where you're on that fringe.
I guess my question might be better put another way. If we have to have roadway studies on traffic to show that impact either for or against the proposed project, then why couldn't we have the applicant show us that there is no impact?
Well, that's what the applicant did. They had to do a traffic study.
But not just traffic, I'm talking about parking. Because parking in certain areas is the issue.
It's the issue, but that isn't. But when you're exempt from the parking, they don't necessarily have to show that. There has to be evidence to show. That's the problem, and that's what I'm saying. And I would say in the Mulligans thing, I don't think you could come up with a clear that they were causing a parking issue when we brought up other problems that were there. One, a lot of the businesses there, being very successful now, don't have enough parking anyway on the site. You've got beachgoers going down there. That's one reason we've been looking at some parking system in the Sexton Plaza. So there are other issues involved in that. And somebody would have to come up to say that. I know it's a very difficult thing to say no. I mean, they could have said, no, it's not having parking. And I would say having gone through the hearings and all that, I don't think there was an issue that could show that they caused a parking problem. That's a problem.
It's very subjective.
Yeah, it's very subjective.
Very subjective.
I mean,
and we all want to see the development of this. And in certain areas, such as the beachside, it's much more sensitive.
Well, and that's the other thing. The thing is, this may change over time, obviously, in a district that's very successful. I mean, for instance, this ordinance could be improved. You could put it in the overlay district. Right. You would have a limitation. Mm-hmm. And if you feel that's a concern, that makes it more, that has to be looked at, that you have to provide that parking. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Yes, so you could differentiate that. Right. And if you have an overlay district, it's pretty easy because you could just say, except in the overlay district, the limits are 1,000 square feet or something like that.
Right.
You follow what I'm saying? So that's something that could be done to kind of, without being you don't want to create so much uncertainty when somebody comes in. This would be certainty for a person, at least from the standpoint they know they're going to have to make parking beyond a certain, amount of square feet if they want to do that.
But if we made parking a part of that, it would be so difficult to improve parking there that what we really said to them is you can't have outside dining.
And that baby, that is the balancing.
Then you might have plenty of parking when all those diners decide to go someplace else.
Yeah.
And that was the issue 20 years ago.
So, I mean, we can make it so difficult that we give up our golden cow for
and that's the balancing act here. The question is the negative, the pros, the cons outweigh the pros. And I think right now that's a successful district. Jim, Mr. O'Connor, is working with groups now to help. The real problem, and I think it's been identified by the group, is employees. We got these big hotels,
and I think
and they're taking up. It doesn't mean we're not having problems with the beachgoers because that would be help. But the employees are one of the big problems because they need to come to work. They got to park somewhere, and they'll be taking up these spaces for a long time or getting tickets. So,
did we address this issue in the overlay district with the beach? Did we make any exceptions?
No, we try to provide incentives to encourage outdoor. Right. And the point is, I believe it took us so long to do that overlay district. If you all recall, 5 or 6 years.
Oh, yeah.
to do that with all the things. But I believe we changed our parking regs just before they did and incorporated a lot of that in.
So there were no
regs.
exemptions in there. Just
There, yes.
And the vision plan, all through it, incorporated those kind of things into those districts.
Correct. I mean, the vision plan did talk about district parking and all that, but district parking requires a commitment to have a project that you provide parking somewhere and invest in, and that needs to be done. But I think there are other ways that they're working on that could be done that doesn't necessarily have to be a multi-structured parking lot of that can be done, and part of it is working together on this because there's a lot of lots out there. The point is being more efficient, that you can, when businesses are closed, it'd be great to people can park at the businesses. I think the identification issue, legal issues and liability issues can be taken care of. So that's part of it.
Has there been any movement with these groups that are meeting about the employee parking?
Jim can give you full, he's been working on it.
Yes, ma'am. We've had several meetings, and there's been a base group, the Oceanside Business Association and the Chamber of Commerce, who have participated in that. But we've had some of the merchants coming and going as to who has participated. But we arrived at several conclusions that we've been able to make happen, signage being one of those. If you drive down Beachland Boulevard now, you'll see a sign that says guarded beaches north and south. They have the arrows and it tells you the distance. We've made better signage at South Beach. If you go up to Sexton Plaza, we're developing a new sign there that we're going to use the national signage or international signage for restrooms and guarded beaches and point the directions both north and south, JC Beach and Hummelson being those. So we've really addressed the signage issues real well. We are stuck on trying to get the parking issue. We started Saturday enforcement. It's been 3 Saturdays now. Vero Beach Hotel and Spa have been the biggest concern, shown the most concerns. We've gotten emails from virtually all of their employees, I think. And we met with the general manager twice. We have another meeting set up in which he will be there. And we have also met with Go Line, talking about doing a busing or a transit type. We've identified a cost. It's about $85,000 a year in order to make that happen. But that would be really during the peak times. We've also identified in excess of 90 parking spaces at Riverside Park that are really paved. And then we also have unpaved parking that we think would be available, because you're really talking about people parking their car in the morning, catching the tram, going to their job, and then at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that tram taking them back and taking their cars. The people who work in the evening, as an example, our signage for enforcement of parking stops at 6 o'clock. It's 3 hours, so if you get there at 4 o'clock, you're not going to violate the sign, and I presume most people would do that. But the $85,000 is really a high number. It carries on until after 6 o'clock with that. So we think we can pare down and get the cost in. The real question is who pays. The city has been very insistent. We're providing the parking. They are the employees of private sector, and so therefore they need to come up with a formula in which to make that payment of cost. We've had one meeting on that, met with 2 of the large hotels. We have another meeting scheduled tomorrow in which hopefully we're going to have a couple more of the hotels as well as the large ones to talk about, is there a formula that we can come up. The issue is we don't want to get bogged down, and this has been a consensus of those of us trying to put this thing together. We don't want to get down to the business that has 2 employees and expecting them to pay for those 2 employees to go down to Riverside Park, and that'll get you bogged down where you'll spend, like you say, 5 years doing an overlay. And hopefully we're going to preclude, because we need to address this very rapidly. We've also talked to the owner of the parking garage, and he's got some very valid concerns. A couple of those, obviously, being the liability. Also, he needs to control who goes in, because he has customers as well as employees that he's built that parking garage for, and how that would be managed. The other thing he has issues with is the security of that after dark. And those of us who've parked there, unfortunately, me, for the concert on Saturday night, you can see that it is pretty dark in there, and it just so happens that at those concerts you have a lot of people coming and going, but if you allowed, for example, the people from Waldo's to park there and they don't get off till 2 o'clock in the morning, they may be the only person in that parking garage 3 floors up and no elevator. And it becomes an issue. And I think that's very, very valid that he has on those concerns. But most of the retail merchants close at 5 o'clock. And with them closing at 5 o'clock, the parking after hours really is pushed on to the major employers at that point. The hotels are the ones that are concerned because they're having entertainment. And so they're more inclined to control their employees, I guess, although there seems to be plenty of parking down there at that point. So we're trying to cover the entire waterfront on this and addressing it. Main Street's been involved in those conversations because 14th Avenue is just on the verge of having some of these same issues, and especially if you get down on the south end of 14th. And we've been working with some of the artists down there about using the parking facility across from Jetson's on Friday nights when they have the art walk, and using a trolley from there and taking people up and making stops frequently along 14th Avenue. And I know at least one of the business owners have been in contact with the GO Line about doing something like that. GO Line has restrictions. It has to be open to the public and all these other things, but if you can work within those parameters, and they seem to think they can. So we are, and again, we're engaging those folks in this conversation to make sure that we look at it universally from both sides.
Sounds like good progress.
Well, in downtown, I think we have some advantages down. There's a lot of open property downtown. There are a lot of vacant properties that I think we could, whether it's purchase or lease or whatever.
We've tried that.
And that hasn't been successful.
Mr. Chairman, we've been very unsuccessful at that.
But there is vacant properties there.
Yeah, there are vacant properties. Now, some of the nicer properties, especially on the south end of 14th, are in an estate. And when you talk to the principal of the estate, she's very reluctant to, A, give you a price, B, to sign any type of agreement, even on a temporary basis, to use the property. We've even had a realtor used that sort of went in anonymously and said, let's see if we can make a deal. I think we can sell this property for you. And we have yet to get a price. We have figured out and did some overlays on parking. We think we can get about 40 parking spaces on that one partial. But again, you'll have probably a couple $100,000 invested in just the development of parking. There is the unique thing about downtown on 14th. If you look at the number of parking spaces, I mean, we got plenty of parking. I mean, you got them all around the post office. You've got them across from Jetson's.
Yeah,
You've got them. The unfortunate part is they're sort of inconvenient to people want to be in front of your door. The county parking garage is there and has, after hours when the court lets out, there's all kinds of parking spaces, but it takes 2 blocks to walk.
Employees may be referred to those areas as opposed to the ones on front of the store.
Well,
downtown,
we don't seem to have employee issues down there. When we do, they usually get a citation, but we haven't had that complaint.
Okay.
Our complaint is when they have either the Friday night thing with Main Street or they have the art festival. Those seem to be the big times when people go. And it's interesting, even in the art walk, when you stop and think about it, everybody walks about 4 blocks going to see the artist, but they won't walk 1 block from the parking space. And it's and we've tried to make it known we don't have authorization, but they have no objection to this point. The school board has plenty of parking if you look just west of 14th, and they even have that little school there, which is another place in the park. The diesel plant, but we don't have any paved area, and it's chained because it's under lease. We are in the process of trying to evict the tenant, but we're having a challenge there. That's another one of the overlay issues. I never knew evicting a tenant would be this protracted.
I bet you wish you would have sold it back when you could have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If we get another opportunity, I think we will definitely make sure.
You walk right over and buy.
You take it as is. Please don't bother me again.
Jim, I have a suggestion, an idea. I know in San Francisco, my son and daughter-in-law utilize the BART system. And their incentive to use that to go back and forth to work rather than take their cars is that their employer pays 25% of it, and they pay the remainder for a monthly chip to go back and forth. Would that be something that you could suggest maybe to the Go Line bus system, if that is utilized down there, to the employers and the employees?
The Go Line cannot charge. They have their same rules apply,
Okay.
and so it has to be free, and it has to be open to the public.
But Jim, you pointed out the employers could put money to help put money.
Right,
so it'd be
to help
similar.
with the $85,000
Yeah, this would be a dedicated bus
Right.
that would travel. Now, it would be dedicated, but it would travel Ocean Drive, and if they are stopping in front of Costa, as an example, then anybody there can get on the bus. It wouldn't be just for employees, but that would be the major intent. And they would be coming from Riverside and making the loop.
Jim, you've pointed out, I think very accurately, that most of the parking problems, except for Sexton Plaza, are basically event-driven. I mean, we have parking problems when we have major events. And on the island, when the owners of the businesses, have an event, they shut down the street and they eliminate about half of the parking, so that they're making their own problem in a sense. Same thing with when Main Street does an event, they close down the street and they eliminate a lot of the parking, and that becomes a problem. Now, those are good things to do, and most communities that have a revitalized downtown have made their downtown very attractive, and they even have pedestrian streets where they basically are limited, so that people are used to walking, and they make the streets attractive with a lot more trees and with brick sidewalks and pavers and things like that. Long term, that may be something we're going to be looking at here, especially if we calm down the Twin Pairs and we're able to widen the sidewalks there and put parking along the Twin Pairs. That would, I think, go a great distance in having this, getting this problem resolved. But we really have to look at, when we have special events and we shut down streets, that we ought to look at the vendors who are saying we're going to shut down the street, say, okay, we're going to have to provide for parking to do that.
Don, the other side of that coin, congestion is commerce.
Right. That's
and
true.
The fact of the matter is they shut down, for example, Ocean Drive. If I want to go to the concert on Saturday night, I may have to walk a block, but it's something that I want to do, so I will do that. It's sort of like you go to any university in this country. Parking is a major issue, but there seems to be a demand, and so people go there. And so I understand it's an inconvenience. The real issue that I think we have right now is a crossroads, is separating the employees from the customers. And we've done an analysis of the three major employers on the ocean side as an example. You have somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 employees. And if you just take that's Vero Beach Hotel and Spa, Costa, and the Waldo's and the Driftwood, and put those together, there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 employees at any given time that could be there. We have 763 parking spaces, isn't that what we've identified, along Ocean Drive that are public parking spaces. And so you have that demand of those employees. We've just got to be able to separate. The demand from customer base is a different issue. And then, again, we have the concerns from the businesses that are saying that, I have elderly customers and they can't walk 2 blocks. I've got to have them convenient. And so we're going through that dynamics, and at the same time, you have the promotion of our city as a destination, and our demographics are changing as it relates especially to Oceanside. But if you go down on Friday night on 14th, I mean, you didn't know there were that many kids in Indian River County. So you just, you see the conflicts that we've got to try to resolve. And I think that's, people realize that, but you still have a lot of folks that are in Vero Beach that remember it 15 years ago when you did not have congestion but at the same time, they had people who could come in and buy a $300 shirt, and they could park in front of their business. Well, now that we have folks that are saying, well, I'm selling more than a shirt, and we even get into our discussions, just to let you know, I mean, it's a pretty lively point of, we don't want people down here selling T-shirts. I heard somebody say, that we're sort of a unique type of boutique community. We don't want people down here selling T-shirts. Well, there's a conflict there because we do have people that are selling T-shirts. Not necessarily,
Depends on the type of T-shirt.
Yeah, it is. And it's not a cheap T-shirt.
We don't want Key West T-shirts.
but it is one of those. And so we're going through that dynamics, and parking just happens to be a focal point of doing it and trying to find a place for the employees. It's sort of like the outdoor dining you all brought up when the code was put in. That was what we were trying to do, is encourage that. And I don't think anybody wants to discourage it. I think what we have is a conflict between the person that's a retailer trying to get the 75-year-old person in front of their store and the guy that's having the outdoor dining and selling a beer.
Well, I think you're right in saying to the employer, your employees are your responsibility, and you should work to providing parking for them, and you don't want your employees. You provide parking for your employees on your property. If then what? But we probably can't enforce that.
You can't legislate that.
You can't legislate that. But what you can do in future development is to say, when we count parking spaces, you have to include parking spaces for employees as well as for your customers, so that they provide adequate parking for both customers and employees in all requirements. I assume we've got that built in somehow, but it's not working.
But
it's not working.
Well, it's not working because the beach area is gone. It's been 30 or 40 years where they had no parking requirements. Right. As I point out, I mean, the Ocean Grill is 60 spaces under. If you build it now, it would have to have 60 more spaces and halves. You have that at the whole thing. So it isn't that we don't require that. And the Holiday Inn, that whole thing with mulligans, there's no way we would allow that under the current code. Right. Okay? I mean, you would get some benefits, but they couldn't meet all the parking.
But at the same time, we don't want people flattening out spaces, building parking lots because I've got 100 employees.
Exactly. You don't want to do that. But I think we have a moral argument to go to the employer and say the problem is employee parking. And we believe it's your responsibility. If you want to have customers be able to be convenient, don't complain to us if you don't have any spaces in front of your place. You've got to take some responsibility of providing and access to parking for your employees and insist that your employees use it. That's the problem. They can provide it, but the employees don't want to walk, so they're not going to use it.
And one of the things we're trying to do is sort of meet that happy medium. I mean, in essence, that's what we've said, or I've said it several times.
Right.
Your employees, and they're referred to as your employees because that's.
But there's two different constituencies here, and that is the hotels and the small retail shops. They're not necessarily in agreement with each other. So, because the hotels really, they have their own enough spaces for their people that and their employees are taking other spaces. So, they're not on the same page exactly, I don't think.
Well, and it's not. And for example, I mean, you will have, take Waldo's as an example. On Saturdays, they have a band at Waldo's, and their customers take parking spaces. They also have to have more employees because they have that type of activity going on.
In the street together.
And that really does conflict with the guy that has a department store down there, a small department store. And that is the conflict. But it's indicative of every main street. I mean, you can go down on 14th and down a successful
main
That's
street
right.
Can have a parking issue.
And the guy that owns that little strip shopping center where the restaurant is located,
Bocce.
Where a Bocce is, if you talk to the owner of that place, his problem is that people are parking in his parking lot during the art walk and taking up, and so not Bocce's not open at night, but the other restaurants over there that he just got a new tenant in, they don't have parking for their customers. And so those are the type of issues that we're dealing with without getting people towed. I don't want it to be like that 7-Eleven where the guy tows cars out, but he has a very valid argument. I have a parking space that is public for my businesses, and so It's it's an unbelievable line to try to walk. But again, successful small businesses, and most people that are in business, their perception is it's my business, and the rest of these people, I don't know where they came from, type of thing. When it gets down to the dollars.
The good news is we don't have a situation where we have too many parking spaces and not enough business.
It's true.
That is correct. Vacancy is not an issue, and
That's right.
And if we keep going on Cardinal, we're going to start filling up spaces there too. So
I hope we do.
Yeah.
I hope it's wonderful for the businesses community in our city.
A lot of successful places do have do have the buses, the trolleys that go around and take people, so it's easier to park a little bit over and then just ride around.
And Vero had one, they tell me, several years ago.
Be a good idea.
And it just the cost got too heavy. And some people, again, another one of the arguments, and because some of this may come back to you all before it's all said and done, is that and there are a couple of the businesses say we only have a problem 4 months out of the year. And the rest of it, we don't really have a problem. You can come down on Saturday and shoot a cannon down the road. Well, then you've got the other side of that argument that, for example, we have people that are saying that's not accurate anymore. If you look at our season now, it's extending out, and especially on Saturdays, where during the summer people are heading down. And then we also have the conflict between beachgoers. And, I don't know if you've heard the stories. They change into their bathing suits in Sexton Plaza and open the door of the car. And then they walk out and they've got their pizza box and they don't stop at Mulligan's or the Ocean Grill and this kind of stuff. So we're hearing all of those type of stories. And then to even kick it off, and this is the real classic story to me, is if you talk to Charlie at Ocean Grill, people are using underneath his canopy of his restaurant and eating their pizzas and drinking their Cokes they brought with them on his property of a restaurant. So it's it's a continuing little saga. But hopefully we've got a lot of people working on this parking. It is a major issue, and we're trying to engage as much of the community as you all have tried to do in your discussions. And I was sort of glad to hear that you're not going to put too many restrictions on outdoor dining, because I think that is a critical part, especially in the walking areas that we have in Vero Beach. So
We could use more of it.
Yeah.
I think, Jim, you're on the right track as far as I'm concerned.
but keep
Thank
moving
you.
on.
No matter what they say.
What about this?
Are you going to become the new Mark?
I'll be the Mark.
If I
May
may,
as well start acting like it.
I wanted to refer you to a community that's had these problems for forever, and that's Delray Beach.
I agree.
Delray.
Yep.
And
Oh,
Delray Beach is always they're always undergoing renovation of their street and their parking on the street and the redevelopment of the district. And it's amazing the transformation that's occurred over the last 20 years. I would go down 10 years ago and I'd go back 5 years later and it was like a whole different area. Parking is a nightmare there. But business is just booming. I mean, there are no hotel rooms. There are no seats at the restaurants. Every clothing store in the world is there. I mean, they get the same arguments that we're hearing on both sides of the issue. But it keeps getting better and better and better. More people, more congestion, more density. And at some point, Vero's going to say, we don't want to be a Delray. We don't want to be a Delray Beach.
Trust me, there's a major portion of our population right now that says that on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, if they can limit any development just to Ocean Drive and that Central Beach and Cardinal, then the world would be very happy to work with that. And a good thing is Penny Chandler, the director with the Chamber of Commerce, she worked on a similar issue in Annapolis. And so she has some ideas that she's bringing forth to try to work through some of these issues, and she's right there beside me through this whole exercise. And
well, tourism is the key driver for us. And as a tourist, I love to visit places like Annapolis and Delray Beach and be able to leave that area having had a good feeling, but leave the problems there with them.
That is true.
And I think that's what our shopper, that's what our tourist is looking at us for. A good experience that they can leave and remember, and then we still have the problems to deal with.
But you know, even with all their traffic congestion, you still go down there because it's a point of destination.
Sure, that's
And
what I'm saying.
that's the key. You've got to have something that attracts people to bring it in. And again, you know, congestion is commerce. So,
Well, a lot of the people live here at the high end because we're not like that, because we're not a tourist destination. And we have to remember it's a balance. It's a balance between our fairly high-end population, which likes to have the museum and they like to have the theater, but they really don't want to have a lot of strangers around. And that's part of the dynamic here, which a lot of places don't have. And I would feel a problem if we did get to a point where we are destination, and then people leave because they're no longer feel it's a small town. The small town here is very nice.
that is a real major concern, and that's one of those areas that we're trying to address. And when I said that people would like to see the development along Ocean Drive in Central Beach and Cardinal, but that would be that's very true. I mean, they don't need to have that we start taking down residential units in order to start commercializing beyond that area. And Delray is an example, and Annapolis is another. I've been to both of those, and I mean, they keep expanding because the demand is there. And in our case, you know, a handful of stores, as long as we can attract enough people to spend money, is the key. And it keeps coming back. The demographics are changing. Fortunately for us, the change has not been as significant as it's been in many of the other beach communities. And a lot of that deals with, you know, patrolling and controlling.
But not addressing it and not paying attention to it is not the answer either.
No,
So
sir.
you have to stay on top of it. You have to do the best you can, and so that the quality of life here remains at the level we have it at now or better.
And that's the important part, that the community needs to be engaged in that. And that's why we've tried to engage as many of the businesses on Ocean Drive and 14th as we can, because even the diversity, we want to engage the people that are in the retail as well as the hotels, as well as the restaurants, and try to make sure that everybody understands you're never going to come where everybody's happy, but at the same time, they've all had their input and time to discuss and cuss it. So,
Innovation and creativity can add a lot to it, and I think we have some of those people in our community, and we should utilize them. And when we do, we'll find answers to some of the questions, maybe not all of them.
yeah, and that's going to be when it gets down to it, it is a function of money, and we've got to figure out how much we're willing to put up as a city and how much that the businesses are doing.
Thank you, Jim. Back to you, Mr.
Okay, I mean, unless you want to discuss this further, staff's going to go forward, prepare an ordinance.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just
Oh, go ahead.
a couple of things on. Let me get my glasses on. On all of the parking ratios, is this all out of the ITE?
Yeah, a lot of it comes from, yes, we use,
Okay.
when we did that, we used a lot of professional references. And I think they're in our code, actually, the way we.
Yeah. And then going back to 63.03 under B.
Uh-huh.
Basically, what we're doing is we're grandfathering in all the existing use.
That's the way we've done forever. We've kept the
Okay.
consistent way we do it. Yes.
And then, but any new development comes up with new regulations.
Well, they have to meet it. When you do expansions and all that, you meet
Right.
the new regulations
Okay.
and change of uses. So, and we allow some, when you redevelop uses, you can bring, it doesn't prevent you from redeveloping, because
Right.
as long as you don't expand your nonconformity.
And the expanding
So
comes
we have a
under
lot of, we're trying to promote redevelopment
Sure.
of these older places.
Sure.
Didn't we, with financial institutions, with banks in particular, didn't we revise that?
Yes.
The State Bank,
Yeah,
if I
the
remember, when
drive-through,
State Bank
yeah.
came through, if they'd have just waited another couple of months, they would have been under the.
You remember once
Modified regulations.
drive-in facilities have less parking.
Have reduced
We've
the
done
number of
that.
spaces because we didn't pave so much of Paradise.
That's right. We
Okay.
did that. Yeah.
And then there's just a typo under 3F.
Oh,
No.
Really?
In the case of two or more separate uses are on site, so
Oh,
either
okay.
The of or the are
Oh,
gotta
okay.
go.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Oh, thanks.
You have to mention-
language, yeah.
I may have picked that
Yeah.
up when I do the ordinance.
sure.
Who knows? I may be on the wrong track. Okay. Okay, thank you.
But it looks like it, it incentivizes very nicely, and yeah, it's good.
Well, I think
Do you
it
want-
cleans
you-
up the code, and that's what
Yeah.
we want
Do
to
you want a consensus vote from this?
No, I'm going to go forward with
we
this.
don't even
unless-
make any
No,
motions?
because we're going to
Okay.
come back to a hearing.
Okay.
That's all right. Okay. And it probably won't be the 20th of February, right? Our second meeting in February? I think that's the 20th? Yes. Okay.
Tim, the people who were so very concerned over how Mulligan's ended up, are they going to be happy with this, or are they still
Oh, I don't know. I mean, they did not appeal
right?
to the court.
Right, I know.
So,
yeah, so we don't know.
I don't know if we're.
Are they part of the meetings that you're having, Jim? Okay,
Yes.
that's good.
So.
Okay,
And certainly,
Thank
this
you.
will get a due process because we're going to have a hearing before you, a hearing before the council. So, all right.
okay, thank you.
Okay. The second thing, I wanted to bring you up to date on the comprehensive plan update. And all the previous times we've talked about doing this, we got to do it now.
It's time.
We got to that time that it's put up or shut up. And I've notified the council was totally behind going forward on a comp plan. I mean, that's always a worry because now with the Growth Management Act, they've watered it down so much, you could probably get away with doing almost nothing, to some degree, without any penalties. And it's really nice to know that people understand that they would like to see that we really do, since we got an out-of-date plan that I believe was out of date when they wrote it and adopted it. So I'm going to be writing a letter to the state informing them that we will be doing a major update. Now, we have 1 year, which will be February 8th of 2016. So I've got all my planners, all three of us, are going to be working on this. So it's going to be the major work effort for us. I'm still going to try to do a few other things that we talked about, and we can go when we talk about the work program on the next item in here. But what I did is laid out what we would do. I think one of the interesting things, we are going to divide the document into two documents, basically. Right now, everything's together. One of the problems with the current document is not only is it all together, but policies are mixed in the data analysis. You don't know what a policy is. And I found that out when I was trying to do revisions in comp plan amendments, that I had to look back into the technical to see, because they had better descriptions back there than I had in the policy, and that really creates some problems. And so what we're talking about is dividing into technical documents, basically the data analysis, meaning that's where you see the alternatives being looked at. That'll be a separate document. Then the policy document will be the policy, strict policies, everything in the map and all that. You can go in there and see what they are, and hopefully we can. As I said, we're going to work on that. They have specific numerical objectives where we can really get away from just some broad. We'll still have some broad statements in that. One of the nice things about this approach, the technical document will not have to go through approval by an ordinance, meaning we can always do some revisions to the technical document, getting approval from you all in the council, but it isn't the effect of law as an ordinance is. But the policy part of it will have to still go through. Any amendments there will always go through an ordinance thing. Another cost-saving measure that I've looked at, I've talked to the county. It has to do with the public school element. If you all know, hopefully you know, we do have a public school element, but it's redundant to the county, and now the state does not require us to. We are required as with our to coordinate and concurrency, which we would continue to do and have things in here, but we don't need to duplicate what the county has at it's just a waste of time. And I talked to Mr. Stan Bowling, the community development director. He agreed. He thought that made sense. In fact, we could just adopt by reference the county element. It's not, we don't have these big issues of new schools and all that. So we're going to look at that, but we'll have to amend the intergovernmental agreement we have with the other governments in the county. There's a agreement that how this all works. I think the school district wants to make some changes to that document too, just because of the problems we've had legally over how we approve projects under that. That was a big mess, as you all know, with the Beachland Elementary fiasco we had to go through. So,
Tim, along the
yes,
line,
sir.
is there a full that was one of the
Yeah.
few questions I had for you on this particular document was, is it integrated with the county? So are we fully integrated with the county so that we don't have in our comp plan thing, as much as we can, be consistent with them? As opposed to
one of the nice things about the way Florida does the Growth Management Act, if it had any teeth to it, is that and we have a good county. I mean, the county does a very good job, their staff, on their comprehensive plan. They're required to do theirs before we do our update. So a lot of the information in the county plan will be used by my staff. In fact, for instance, there are ways that we can really cut down the document. If you, in the current document, you have a list of the hundreds of endangered and threatened species. We will be able to just do a small paragraph to that and reference this.
Good, that's what I was.
You see what I'm saying? There's no need to do that. And county, they have a very detailed document. But we will have differences because we have a different, we're dealing with a smaller locality. We have different issues to look at than the county does. And being the county seat, we're more of an urban center. We don't have all those other issues worrying about, urban service boundaries and all that other stuff. But we will address that. But the county document have that. We have it on. I put it on our in our network, and so our staff will be following that. So we will have a lot of consistency with the county on that kind of thing. Of course, we get into things like water, sewer, and stuff. There are some differences that we'll be working with our staff. The one thing I do point out, since we do have some other advisory committees on this, you will be the focal point of what we go through in the workshop, but we will probably be asking like the Rec Commission, water and sewer, the utility people to also have, because they're involved in that, and we want to make sure that we've taken in, we go through all the steps and people that have more responsibility for those kind of recommendations. But the comp plan should all work together, and that's the whole idea.
How recently did the county update theirs?
Yes, they just did it. They just finished a couple of years ago.
Okay.
So they're already working, and in fact, I picked out the date of 2035, a 20-year period.
Yeah.
We're looking at the county. So we'll have some more up-to-date data in the county because they don't even have the census in their comp plan. But the county adopted their elements all under ordinance, see? Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm suggesting we do it separately so we have a technical document that we can update as we go along, which I think is the way to go.
It seemed the city council was spending some time on stormwater management, and,
yes.
And we're
and that
pretty concerned with that.
Yes.
Is there any way we can? Does that impact them? That we can remove that element forward in if it takes a whole year plus to do this? Can we move that up?
Well,
so
I don't
they can
see.
Give them
We're going to get this. We want to have the document all done at one time because you want to make sure you don't have inconsistencies in the elements. So we're not going to
do the whole thing.
We'll take care of it. It's not going to be a problem.
Okay. I always thought maybe we could pull one out and bring what they looks like they're looking at that more carefully in some of these other elements. And if we could get that one to them, they could make comments.
Yes. And I think one of the other things that we're working on, and I've talked to Cindy Lawson, who's our finance director, is that we need to integrate more the comprehensive, the improvements that are needed for the comprehensive plan. For concurrency, stormwater, roads. Those kind of things need to be. Those kind of improvements need to go through the process, and they should go through annually as part of our 5-year capital. So what we're going to do is probably have you all review some of that, where we have projects that we haven't set that process up yet. That's why we came back last year after the fact, after everything was adopted, and asked you to. Okay, it's already done deal. See, it just wasn't but it takes a while to change how a process is done. Cindy's done a great job getting the city where it is now, and she doesn't have a problem to do this, and I don't think the staff will, because it'll work seamlessly. I mean, and you brought up stormwater. That's a major area in the comp plan because of water quality issues, not just handling the stormwater itself, but the water quality is the major issue. One of the reasons why I want to work on the wetland stuff, because we need to look at those buffers that we haven't had previously in there.
Yeah, logistically, Tim, you've got, between now and June, you've got 5 elements or 6 elements really you want to work at, and then you've got 6 more elements or 5 more elements from July to December. Logically or logistically, are we going to be looking at maybe once a month looking at the element you're working on and
It-
giving
it
you
will-
some
it'll be
giving you some
prob-
guidance there, or are we going to get a big thing at the end of the first 6 months?
I'm going to try to get to them as we get them done.
Yeah.
And I've got
We'll look at them one at a time.
Right. We're going to look at them one time. It depends how we go. And as I said, we have other work we have to do at the office, and I don't want to overburden you, but we will try to get something in that's more thoroughly done. You'll probably would see the data analysis part of it before you'll get to the policies. Okay, that's one of what I told the staff. Let's do the data analysis before we really work on policies to do that. I think that's an approach. So it's going to be tough to make this. I don't know if we can or not, but we're going to do the best we can on it, and that's all I can say. I mean, you never know. Development's picking up. In fact, I was going to tell you today, we've got the Old Heritage Reserve Project property. We've got a Canadian group want to come in, put 780 units in there.
Ooh.
So
Where's that?
Where is it?
out there, it's out past 43rd Avenue by the airport. It's that big. It used to be Dodger
Yeah.
Pines.
Oh,
Dodger
right.
Pines.
Okay.
Oh,
How many units?
700
780 units,
condos,
single family.
single families.
I wasn't too happy when I looked at it, but I'm not going to prejudice anybody. All right, because they're going to, our code is our code. So we,
Yeah, but the traffic impact.
and that'll all be looked at. I've already contacted the county. County will be
It's already
involved with review of this project just because it
What-
impacts
what-
them.
What kind of units?
Single
Single
family
family
they told me
houses.
so far. They may
Wow.
change that. They're having a neighborhood meeting on February 12th here in the chamber.
That's not the over 55 community.
No. This is. I don't even know what they intend to do. Private roads. They haven't given me any information because they haven't submitted. I've looked at a draft.
What's the acreage?
It's like 380 acres,
18
so it's
holes.
about 2 units an acre. Something like that.
2 units
Short
an acre.
18 holes.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have.
it's-
There's
I
a
know.
lot of wildlife on that property.
Well,
a lot of wildlife.
Remember, we had approved a project out there previously.
I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already, they've got some.
So anyway,
It's
that would
like
be
fun.
Tim, remember
Yes.
you passed this out. This is the land use, the accepted properties for certain land uses. We were going to try and coordinate what we had with the county.
Well, no, not necessarily coordinate with the county.
Well, that our lists would be.
Yeah, we were going to work on our list. What I was trying to do is I gave that out to show you that we would try to maybe take that matrix approach. Okay. I'm going to do.
Is that something?
Okay, well,
we'll be
we get the
addressing?
work program. I'm going to still work on the 2 residential districts to take care of some of that. The commercial non-residential districts, they're going to take some work. I'd rather be working on the comp plan than getting into that. Okay, so
Okay.
I can only do so much. My
going to the
staff
back
is.
Tired.
We're
Back
trying.
burner.
I
Doesn't
mean,
come
I
into
feel-
this.
I mean, all right. So
It's a nice idea.
Well, I'm going to get there. That's it. Yeah, that was one. That was going to be my 4th item until I get. Sorry, but that's good. So I didn't forget after. Okay. So I outlined what the approach in the process was. I'm not going to go over it. You can read it. And I did a outline of the content of the plan and all that. So that's basically what we're going to follow, and the goal, objectives, and policies format. I like what the county did, and I think I'm trying to get us to follow that, but I handed out our writing good English thing to our staff. You got three authors on this, so you're trying to make this readable, because it's funny, even looking at the county thing, you can tell you had numerous cooks in the kitchen, let's put it that way. So we're going to try our best on that. So that's it. I just put that as an information item. The next item I have is a proposed work program. Ms. Manus asked us to come back with that. So if you notice, I went through and did the outline. We just alluded that. You can see I've left out some of my things. I still did, other than the comp plan things, I still put that draft ordinance on the wetlands, which I will do my best to get done. And the other elements had the single family and the multifamily that we'll try to take care of. What I said we would do is consolidate those into one chapter. The single family is already one chapter. We're going to do the same with the multifamily. We got a lot of inconsistency. It will really clean up the document and clean up some other things in there that are troublesome when people try to interpret it and we try to apply it to them. So this is still an ambitious program just to do this, and I know You probably want to do some other things. I certainly, if things come up you would like to do that, we will certainly consider it. I'm not trying to exclude everything, but I really think we got to get this done, and it's just been a long time coming.
I have a question. Just
Okay.
going back to the GOPs, the goals, objectives, and
Yes.
policies. On the bottom of the page 3, the first dot you've got there, use the word hyphen. And I don't see a hyphen anywhere. It totally confused me. I see point or dot, period, other words for it. I don't understand why that's in there.
Okay.
Second line under that.
I don't know either. Right now you caught me because I didn't give it a good example. And it could be because I'm taking things from other documents that I just screwed up. I'll take a look at
Okay,
that.
because
Okay. No,
I hear so, we used to say period, a one, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Now I'm
it
hearing
would be a
people
period.
say dot,
Yeah, I think our current ones has a hyphen. I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
The intent obviously is to help staff. We're trying to make sure we're all following the same format. In fact, I've given them a format for how the document, headings and subheadings and all that, they've been given. I didn't give you that, but that's so they can
Okay.
follow. Okay, but I'll take a look. I think that's just an oversight of
Then
mine.
then the other comment I had was becoming so aware of all the impact from the fast train that's proposed and working on that. I'm acutely aware that NEPA, National Environmental Protection Agency, refers to the natural environment and the human environment. They make that separation now. So when I'm looking at the goal, and I believe this is the county's statement.
Yes, ma'am.
They talk about the county's rich and varied environmental resources. I think that's an outdated statement based on what we're looking at today.
I just put that down as an example of I didn't say that's a good.
Yeah.
I just put that down as an example.
Well, I realize that,
Yeah,
but
and
we
remember-
have different language today.
Well, we'll use yes. We're going to look at it.
Yeah.
Part of what we look at, we also have what we call our glossary for the public. We're going to be very careful to try to avoid words that incite, like the anti-Agenda 21 people.
yeah, exactly.
You understand words
Yeah.
like sustainability,
Yeah.
So you got to be. So
But
we're going to
environment
try to
is-
do that. But you're right. Remember, we're
Yeah.
going to have a conservation element too.
True.
So
Yeah.
usually on a land use element, it covers every just a broad statement. But yeah, I'm not saying. I just put that down to show.
Environment used to be trees and bushes and, no more.
Well, and we look at. They look at everything when you're looking at that. But we do look at the natural and the man-made.
and that's,
And it's separate. And,
I've learned a
and
lot.
some people, when we're in the Keys, everybody complained we just looked at the natural environment. So we made a conscious effort to look at the man-made environment when we did the update of their comp plan. So, okay.
very good. Thank you.
The other thing that Jim mentioned, I went to a meeting held by the Cultural Council last night. The downtown had to do with this proposed arts village that they're talking about. They had been talking about the diesel plant as an arts center. Now I think they're looking at a proposal that would take like an 8 or 9, 10 block area of the downtown, south of 60 to 20th Avenue along 19th Street. That would become an arts district where you have a mixed use where you have artisans that could live there, work there, restaurants, all sorts of the arts, dance studios, you name it, that would be under the arts. And it's worked in many places, particularly even small towns. It's been very successful. And we thought it was a great idea. And we met with them last week prior to this meeting. And we explained to them, look, we're about to do our comp plan. We'd love to integrate what you're proposing in the comp plan, because I think eventually, if this thing they get the support for it, is that they would like to have a single type of district, and it would have certain uses would be allowed, others would be either prohibited or discouraged, and incentives, which takes some time to do. And the other thing we pointed out to them, there are multiple property owners. The city is not known going in and telling property owners, this is what you're going to, you can't do this and that without getting some support. So it'll take an effort, and they've got a lot of the organizations already on board. We had talked to them about talking about the economic development zone group, which was set up by the city, that have, and they're looking at that. So I think this is very interesting. You
yeah.
certainly will have a lot to say in this, being the advisory body to the city council on this, and clearly we will address this as we do our comprehensive plan update, as well as the railroad issue.
Yeah.
Well, they've got to move pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Pardon, yes.
But
Wait, I'm sorry.
The art district
Well,
concept is
they
going.
want to move quickly, but there's a lot that has to be done.
Yeah, I don't see that happening within your year.
No, we're going to work on it. As I said, we want to set the policy basis. We don't have to have all the details, but obviously, a policy basis is one thing. Going into regulations is another, and that I can tell you, going back to the overlay district, it was real easy to talk about what you wanted. It was a lot harder to then put the regulations in place. And but you're right. They brought up, we'll be back to you in 60 days, and I said, well, that's fine, but it's going to take a little while to go through that. There's a lot of things that have to be done, but I think the concept is good. And the one thing that I thought was good, that they weren't asking for a handout, at least right up front. But obviously, if this thing's successful, getting the twin pairs situation, I'd love to have taken. I'm totally committed to having something done on that. To doing other things to make this a much more pedestrian, where people can stroll, go to a cafe, go into an artist studio, get some cooking lessons or something. I mean, it sounded great, so it's hard to say you don't like it. So it was interesting. There was over 60 people there last night.
And what's the
I
perimeter?
got a question, Tim. I'm sorry.
Well, it was, and I saw them, they showed it. It's basically everything south of I believe it was across the Twin Pairs, from the westbound Twin Pairs, all the way down to 19th Street, 20th on the south, 20th Avenue on the west, over to like 14th Street in that area, where you have all the artists.
That includes a little residential in there, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, right now,
That's the whole idea.
I was asked about the zoning, and you do have, it's multifamily zoning. It's got POI zoning. It's got some downtown zoning. The thing is, that whole area is, I guess, the Edgewood subdivision. It's an old subdivision. There's some historic buildings.
Yeah.
It's a great opportunity to protect some historic, put them to use. It's been troublesome for our code people, and I think the Osceola neighborhood was there, and they're very supportive of this whole thing, even though it doesn't necessarily. It will give they like it right there, but it'll also take care of some of the issues.
Sure will.
If it's very successful, that impact their neighborhood negatively right now. So I think I didn't see a lot of people saying no to the concept. Let's put it that way. And but they have these ideas. This will be the village. It's different than going to Miami and all this. So it was interesting.
As we're working on the comp plan, these various issues, can we bring what we're doing into the community and ask for, community support? Maybe, one of the churches or some kind of venue where we could invite neighborhoods to participate?
I think as we go along here, I was really talking about workshops, but it doesn't preclude our doing when you feel it would be appropriate to do it that way. Look, remember, we don't have a huge staff here, so public participation is great, but you can only do so much, and get this thing done and all that. But I want to make sure that we have proper input. So we'll advertise, we'll make things available on our internet, and if you feel it's necessary in some cases, it would be appropriate.
Well, I go back to when they did the vision plan.
Yes.
There was such enormous cooperation and working together that I'd like to see the community involved as much as possible.
I mean, we just can't do that kind of level they did in the vision plan.
Yeah, we had outside
But then again,
consultants doing that.
The vision plan's a good example of what suddenly falls apart when you get down into the thing. So let's hope we can. And we're going to look at the vision plan because, as I've pointed out, there's some very good concepts in there that we would like.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
My wife is very deeply involved in this project.
She is.
And I will, there's no financial, connection. I just want to make sure that I don't have any conflicts as far as the board's concerned.
No.
All right. And one of my conversations with her is, as this is going forward, there are investors that are looking at, if this is contemplated, it's on the horizon. There are properties for sale in there.
That's right.
And there will be people buying those with anticipation that such a district may be created. So we have to be aware that even having a conversation publicly about this may impact the real estate activity in that area as we talk.
And
about.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question about the DOT. When we talked about the twin pairs, what was the date on the repaving?
Well, we're going to find out that. I believe
5 years ago.
Monty is getting some further information, isn't it, Jim, on that?
It's not within the next 5
It's not
Oh,
next
it's not.
5
At least
years.
5 years out.
It's
But
5 to
we're
7,
looking
something
at,
like that.
we'd like to get this thing project ready, the things we need to have
Yeah.
done. So we're looking at, I think, we're looking at the politics of we think there's some support. So it's just, we're looking into a little more. If you recall, when we recommended the council that we'd like to see something done, that we had some recommendations to try to carry it through,
Right.
which didn't quite get accepted, but I think there's a little more support now in the council now to do something. So Monty is looking at that, and we'll make a report back to you if I learn some more on that, okay? I mean, I think that's important. It's always been important for us.
If there's some things we can do before we do the major renovation the states do, that would be nice.
Yes.
If we-
And that,
if we
and
can
we
do any
did,
of
and
that.
that was our intent, but how long it's going to take before they think it's ready to go. And right now, so we're all laughing about ask for the First Armored Division to drive down the street about a couple hundred times.
The biggest part of that was the biggest part of it, if I remember Monty talking, was the bump outs and
Yes.
reducing
Yeah.
one lane down.
Yeah.
And that wasn't a major
That's
change.
striping.
That's just
Striping.
Striping,
Striping.
a lot with
Striping.
striping.
Colors.
Yeah, eliminate one of
Colors
those
with-
lanes just with striping and
Oh,
put parking.
and that's it. I mean, we're going to look at some different things we can do on this thing. So it's when you start moving the curbs and the bump outs, then you got some costs.
Then it's
You got some real costs.
but
So,
for
but-
downtown progress, that's no expense really.
Well, you're speaking to the choir here.
I understand.
You know what I mean? It isn't like
I mean, your city.
I had no influence on anyone when we did this.
Yeah, I think people had that wrong last time. There's some modification to that.
They didn't see the difference
They didn't
between
see the difference.
feasibility and
You can stand in the middle, between signals, you can stand in the middle of the twin pairs and just stand there,
Yeah.
period, until the next light releases, and then there's 15, 20 cars. And then you can stand there again.
it
We
was
don't
a
need 4
feasibility
lanes.
study. That's what people.
Oh, they've done that.
confused
They've
about.
done
So
that.
they did that.
We did this.
They did
I know,
that.
but that's what the confusion.
Even
I
Brian's
felt.
photographs were
It
effective,
was-
I thought.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was all about feasibility, not this is exactly how it's going to look. It was,
No, and that was
And
the
that's
whole
what
idea
people
that
were
was
confused.
feasible. And the one thing we're trying to find out, I know I talked to Monty about this, is make sure how long is that study valid
Right.
from the state. We want to
Yeah,
be
redo
sure that
Yeah.
we have the study done, because right now it shows
Costs
that we
more.
can reduce
Yeah.
lanes
Right.
and there's no problem
No-
from
no
the
impact.
state standpoint.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay?
We have
That's-
anything else?
Move adjourn.
But no, not quite. Board member matters. Mr. Coy, do you want to bring up your question last time and we didn't get answered this time?
Which was?
From the minutes about the the boxes on the line. I didn't want it to go unnoticed because I agree with you on this, and we'll keep on it till we get it right.
Okay, I promise you we will try to
And
do
it can be
something.
somebody else other than you that does it. It can be
Well, no, I know that,
enforcement.
but I'm running out of people who can do things.
No, enforcement.
But I'm going to see if we can. I've got to talk to our attorneys. I think we can move those mailboxes on the. It's got to be on the property, and as long as they still have access to it and it doesn't.
It's growing and it's getting bigger and it's getting more
Yeah,
diversified in
let me
colors
see
and
what we can do.
sizes.
He's trying to track down who owns all this.
If you put them in a truck, they'll come and get them.
They're on city property. Take them away.
Yeah,
You can't. There's.
Yeah.
It's a public forum. That's why we've been very careful.
Can we
Peggy
have a-
isn't here to go through that again, but I can tell you that's why we're very careful. I know.
Can I put my own out there then if I want to? It's
Yes.
okay. I'll put one out there of my own business on it. Just try to get, is it
And then
okay?
we can go after you.
You fine. If nobody else is going after you, I'll take advantage of it.
All right. I'll see what I can. Something we can do
Yeah.
to do that. Okay. And I'm not.
Okay. Is there any other board member matters today? Seeing none, I'm looking for an adjournment. So Joe adjourned. Okay.
Hey, thanks
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.